Welcome to Albuquerque Real Estate Talk, episode 549, Tracy. It is the end of August 2025, and we got three big topics this week.
Okay.
One is we have the latest home price appreciation data from FHFA, which I can nerd out on and we can talk about. I'm also going to talk about where are we at with Albuquerque home prices and are we at a tipping point? And so I'm going to lay out my case there. And
sounds interesting.
I really want to bring in a lot of different contexts on home values and what's going on with home prices in Albuquerque. You have a featured community, Mesa del Sol.
Yes, I do. Mesa del Sol.
And then we have a question that came up we want to address for home buyers. And we're going to put a little twist on this. And it's, what is the typical timeline to buy a home? And so I was like,
in Albuquerque or our metro area.
Yeah, in Albuquerque. Yes, thank you. Good point. However, I was curious. I said, okay, if just, somebody goes to AI, ChatGPT, for example, and says, what's the typical timeline to buy a home? And it gave an answer, of course, but we've got to kind of correct AI a little bit and tell them where they got it wrong.
Yep. So that'll be fun.
Give some extra context. So, all right.
So
Tracy.
let's geek out, Tego. I mean, okay, so really what I said when we sat down to do our show today was, are you kidding? All we can talk about this week is Tay-Tay.
Who?
Tay-Tay.
I'm joking.
Travis.
I am trying so hard to ignore that story.
I mean, come on. So I asked Sam, who's sitting here that you can't see, and I said, Sam, has there been like a mashup of their names? What do people call them? And is it like the Benefers? And we're like, none of us know a mashup. So I made one up. I'm going to call them the Trailers. Travis.
The Trailers.
And Taylor.
The
Trailers. Okay, we can move on. But
wow, interesting. I wonder, let's see if we can get that to catch on. Yeah, I got to tell you, like, you know how sometimes you look at me when I'm talking about housing economists and housing econ, and you just like glaze over.
Right.
That's what just happened to me when you're talking about them. So
yeah,
I just.
Okay, I will stop because I could go on, but okay. So Tego, Albuquerque, is it the time for buying a home in Albuquerque? What's that timeline like? You did a little AI chat question on AI and said, how long does it actually take to buy a home in Albuquerque? And AI said, people are surprised when you tell them it's usually not a weekend process. Let's walk through the typical timeline so you know what to expect.
Thousands of home buyer seller interactions we've had over the years, Tracy, has anybody ever said, gosh, I thought it would take a weekend to buy a home?
No, but
right.
but it says it's usually not a weekend process. But how many times have I sold a home to people in maybe their first 3 days of deciding they want to buy a home?
That is true.
Many times.
That is true.
Because home buyers that are, maybe just starting to think about buying a home don't realize how quick and easy it can be when you have the right partnerships, right? You have the right lender in place, you have the right realtor in place. We get people from all over the world that come to us saying, I want to buy a house, Tego. And they search, they start online. And once we start looking at homes, they say, I don't know. We had some walk-ins this week in our office. And they said, we just got in last night. We drove in. We got in at 9. We're going to be opening this business here, and we need a house. And they said, but we're going to rent for a few months because we need to get familiar with areas. We haven't even searched. We know nothing about the neighborhoods or areas. Here's our criteria, and they gave me 3 things: close to a gym, close to where they might be working, and a price range. And so I said, okay, but let's do a buyer strategy session, sit down and go through, what it takes to be a buyer today, and set up a tour of maybe 5 or 6 homes in different areas, because what I know is a lot of times people orient very quickly and they're drawn to areas. When you take them on a tour, we took them to the townhome in Corrales, something in Rio Rancho, east side, northwest, and near northeast. And immediately they loved North Rio Rancho. They were like, this is perfect for me. It has the amenities nearby. It has the gym I want nearby. and they picked out a house on day 2.
A lot going on in North Rio Rancho, just kind of side note right now, but
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go back to this. So the AI said,
it's usually not a weekend process.
yeah, it said that, which of course, but then it says the step 1 is getting ready, and that takes 1 to 2 weeks.
Right. It says before you even look at homes, you'll want to get pre-approved with a lender and connect with your agent.
And that's true,
True.
but it doesn't take 1 to 2 weeks.
How long does it usually take to get pre-approved with a lender? And a good local lender here in the Albuquerque real estate market?
An hour?
Or 20 minutes?
Yeah.
A 15, 20-minute phone call with one of our great lenders in our market, and they can know pre-approve, right? Well, pre-qualify, not pre-approved. Based on
I don't know.
what
We're not going to
yeah.
go down the pre-approved versus pre-qualified rabbit hole, but basically, yeah, I mean, you can get a really good idea what you can afford within 20 minutes.
Right. And that's based on what you tell the lender. They don't necessarily have your pay stubs and your tax documents yet, right? But based on what you tell them, they can give you a very good idea of your income, your outflow, and your general credit score to get you ready to look at homes that have the right monthly payment that you're comfortable with.
Yeah, and then step 2, it said house hunting.
Once you're ready, the home search begins. Some buyers find the right home in the first weekend, it says. Others take a month or more. In Albuquerque right now, with inventory higher than it was a year ago, but still below 2019, most buyers are finding homes within a few weeks. So is AI right?
Well, yes and no. So the truth is most people spend a lot of time online looking at homes before they call a realtor, before they call a mortgage lender, before they do anything else. So they've already done a little bit of pre-searching to just see what's out there and see what's going on in the market. But I think that's the reality is, yes, you could find it the first weekend or the first week you're looking. You could find, it could take 6 months. I mean, Tracy, we've had people we've been working with for multiple years. Literally, just kind of waiting for the right house, waiting for the right time in their life and stuff going on. So it really depends there. But yes, there's a whole house hunting process. And part of that is narrowing down what's important to you, what are the things that you must have versus the things that you would like to have, and making those compromises too.
And realizing that sometimes the must-haves go away after you really get in several homes and you realize what's possible and what makes sense for you. So then they say house hunting. Once you're ready, we look at homes. And, Tego, I told these folks that came in that hadn't been online looking at Albuquerque homes. It was a very unusual situation because they were figuring out where they were going to do their business first and focusing on that. So then, okay, now we're going to do this. Let's get in the car and drive, and they found us. So I told them a story like 30 years ago, pre-Tego. It was BT, before Tego. I was looking for a house, and the first house I saw on the first day was beautiful, perfect, great house. But I felt like, I can't buy the first house I see. So I kept looking, and that house sold, of course, like the next day because it was a great house. So sometimes we have to be out of our comfort zone. And when we find that house, the first week or whatever, first day, we have to be ready to move on it. Or we have regrets because I still 30 years later wish I had that house, even though we've got a great house.
We've got a great house, yeah.
It was a great house in Dietz Farm back into the ditch.
Yeah.
Next
Remember
to
you
the
telling
Rio
me
Grande.
that story many times.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we've talked about, all right, step 1, getting ready. And we're talking about, the steps, the process to buy a home in the Albuquerque area. So we talked about getting ready, and that could mean a whole lot of things. Step 2 is the house hunting. Okay, now you're ready to make an offer and go under contract. So let's just assume you've made your offer, you've negotiated, your realtors helped you negotiate the terms of the deal and all of that stuff. Now you're under contract. Now what happens? And again, so we asked AI, and I thought this was pretty good. It basically said week 1 is inspections and seller's disclosures, usually a little longer than a week, just depending on that. And then it's talking about appraisals, and it's talking about loan underwriting, and then it's talking about final walkthrough. Now that's what AI said, but the reality is that is so simplified and doesn't get all the nuances that come up. So, like a good point is that you say, okay, well, you get inspections. Well, what inspections?
Right.
What's important? What does a property have? Does a property have a well? Does it have in-floor ducts? There's so having somebody by your side to help you understand, and then certain parts of town, right, Tracy, have different things that you need to consider that in certain neighborhoods.
Right.
We know there's certain neighborhoods that have certain type of plumbing, right, that could be a challenge. So there's so much nuance there. So yes, it's interesting. AI says, yes, you do the inspections, but you still have to know what to ask for.
Right. And honestly, the AI, when it set up these timelines, it says week 1, week 2 to 3, week 3 to 4, and then like week 4 to 6, which is typically week 4 to 5 in our market. AI was right, and they were giving the big, she was giving the big overview. That's funny how we always do that. But most closings here are in that 30 to 40 day range from an accepted contract, and there are a lot of steps along the way, right?
Yeah, and so let's just talk about due diligence real quick. So if somebody's listening that's never purchased a home before, it's been a very long time, what is due diligence? What does that mean? Because every buyer has this period for them to do their, air quote, due diligence.
Sure. So the due diligence is, when you go and you view homes, you're looking sort of big picture, you're not looking into the mechanicals and if they work or not, or opening and closing windows, or checking outlets to make sure the electricity works on every outlet. So that's one of the things, is you're going to do some inspections perhaps to make sure the house is in a condition you're comfortable with, in addition to any other inspections that you want or any documents that you need to review, which
yeah,
could
and that's
be...
what I was going to say, because we talk about inspections a lot when we're talking about due diligence, but there's this whole other thing where you may need to inspect documentation about the
Right.
property.
And ask more questions to make sure you're comfortable with
Right.
the condition of a property.
So there could be a homeowners association, or there could be covenants for the neighborhood that you need to review, right?
Or just the seller's property disclosure of what they want to tell you that they know about the house.
Yeah, so the main ones are inspections like we talked about, and that could be a whole gamut of things, as well as the document review. The other one is survey.
Right.
So you're going to review a survey and make sure that, the property's where it's supposed to be and there's not any issues with that. And then there's one we have for insurance.
Right.
So that you can review and make sure that you can get proper insurance for your property.
And title.
That's been a bigger problem in mountainous areas in New Mexico, not really in the Albuquerque area, but there are some areas that are fire prone that are having challenges getting insurance right now. So that's another step that somebody can take.
Right. So
What was the other one you said?
title,
Yeah,
making
title.
sure that
Yeah.
there's no encumbrances, no liens, judgments that can't be cleared, to make sure that you get clear title with no baggage, so to speak.
And then the last one is, not the last one, but
Another.
another big one is appraisal.
Right. If there's an appraisal.
Yeah, if there's an appraisal, if you're getting a loan, there's going to be an appraisal, making sure that the bank agrees with the price that you feel the home is worth. And they agree with that by doing an appraisal and
They're
saying,
just
okay,
justifying the sale price because they haven't seen the house, right?
Right. So they just have to verify, third party, that the home is worth what you're wanting to pay for it and that they're comfortable giving the loan for. So that's another thing along the way.
Yep. So the takeaway from start to finish,
Yeah.
AI was kind of close.
Yeah.
The typical timeline to buy and close on a house in Albuquerque is, 4 weeks, but it can be a little longer. 2 weeks to kind of get ready, a few weeks to shop, 15 or 20 minutes with the lender, but then, getting all the documents and things to them takes time. But really, somebody could be in a new home in 5 weeks easily if they really were motivated.
So let's talk about the stuff that AI doesn't understand, which is, what are the things to watch out for? What are some of the pitfalls that can come up along the way? And what are the things that cause delays, for example?
Well, once we get inspections, then we have a repair negotiation. So our first negotiation is getting the house under contract. The next one might be repairs, and there might be some back and forth there of things that are important to you, but the seller may or may not choose to take care of for you.
The biggest thing we see, the most common thing that delays a closing, is the buyer not replying and getting the information to the lender in a timely manner. Would you say that's fair?
I would say most delays in closing are the timeline of getting inspections and negotiating and repairs, in addition to the lender required things. Because when a lender asks a borrower and says, hey, I need this now, they really needed it like yesterday to complete their file, right?
Yeah.
So if you delay as a borrower in getting your lender everything they need, yes.
We'll do another pod one time about the lending process. And the thing is, we see a lot of delays because the buyer doesn't understand the urgency of getting certain things. And there is a lot of stuff that a buyer has to provide to the lender for them to underwrite that loan.
For
So
sure.
You just I want to put that
So-
out there because that's one of the things that'll come up that delays the process.
And I want to say, we work on our buyers and sellers timelines, right? We had a closing recently where it was not with typical financing, and we closed it in about 11 business days. We had another new construction where the buyer closed in 3 weeks, from walking in and saying, I want to buy a house, to being in, getting keys to their new home. Sometimes people want 60 days. They need more time to pack and move and get all that process done. But that's why that buyer strategy session is so important, to just really see how we can best meet our buyers' needs.
Well, and it's also setting expectations, right? And
Right.
kind of talking about what we just talked about.
Exactly.
Of what the process is going to be like and how it's all going to go down.
Yeah.
Yep.
For sure.
Awesome. So Tracy, all right, we're gonna segue. Thanks for if you stayed for that and listened to it. Thank you. I think it's really helpful. We're just trying to get some good information for home buyers. We know there's a lot of people that search on YouTube for what's the home buying process. And so that's what we are attempting to answer for people so they can understand it before they jump into this whole idea of buying a home.
Yep. And buying a home in Albuquerque, New Mexico might be different than buying a home in Las Cruces, New Mexico, or Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Definitely different than Santa Fe.
Definitely. So happy to help, though.
It's not called the city different for a reason.
Careful with
Wait,
that.
did I say that wrong?
Careful.
I did. I said that
We
wrong.
like
No,
Santa Fe.
I love Santa Fe. It's just
And we
it's
like
just
Santa
it's a
Fe real
different-
estate.
Yeah, it's a different market because it's lots of second homes. Anyway, we're not going
So-
down that road yet.
We're going to talk about my favorite new construction and resale construction neighborhood in the Albuquerque metro
Oh,
area.
I didn't know it was your favorite.
It is today.
I learned something.
Just
Okay.
today.
Just today.
Just today. Mesa del Sol. So, how many of you listening and have been to Mesa del Sol? And so, here's why most people know Mesa del Sol, Tego. The New Mexico United practice field is there.
Yep.
The
Isleta Amphitheater.
Isleta Amphitheater. I was going to call it by its old name. The
It was
Isleta
Journal- it used to
Amphitheater,
be the
Journal Pavilion.
Journal- yeah, but now it's Isleta.
Isleta Amphitheater, where they have great concerts all summer, spring, fall long. And Netflix studios are there. But there are a lot of great builders building new construction there right now, and they just opened a lot more lots out there, and several, I think 5 new home builders are building there now. Richmond American, Abrazo Homes, D.R. Horton, Twilight Homes, and one other, I'm sure of it. So let's talk about Mesa del Sol.
Yeah.
So when people ask me where new homes are in Albuquerque, one of my first answers is going to be simple: Mesa del Sol. So this community is one of the only places in the metro Albuquerque area where you'll find new construction. There's a little bit on the west side, a little bit in the southwest, quite a bit in Rio Rancho, but for Albuquerque, this is one of the only master planned large neighborhoods where you can pick from a variety of builders building new as well as resale homes. So it's really a master planned happening right now.
I've got their website up on the screen if you're watching online. That's showing what their phases are, what the master plan looks like moving into the future.
Yep. And so home prices in Mesa del Sol, you might be surprised because you can buy new construction there in the $300,000 range right now. And some of the resale homes, there's a few smaller homes that are 1,100 square feet, that type of smaller property. Low 300s, there's one in pending right now that was listed at $319. There was a sale at 309 this year. So, that one was a 1,260 square foot home that was built in 2015. So there's new in the high threes and sometimes resales for less. But in general, big range of big homes, little homes. But things I love about Mesa del Sol, Tego, they have a dog park, which I would need. Right? They've got a lot of open space and parks, even little pocket parks. So they're not all huge, but some are just, small little corner, just to give homes some relief. There is a cafe there now, so you can get food to go or sit down and eat. They have live music and food truck once a night, also, or once a week all summer. I think it's Thursday night. I can't remember for sure. It's pretty quick and easy to get in and out of there if you need to work downtown or the hospitals, UNM. What I know is from having houses listed there and working with buyers there, a lot of people love to live there that work on base, Kirtland Air Force Base, or work in the labs on base, work downtown and UNM. Not to say that, it's that far to go anywhere else. But it's a great community. So if you're looking for new construction or resale, you want to be close to the airport, close to a lot of activities, Mesa del Sol might be a good option for you.
Let me give a couple more data points. One is Mesa del Sol is designed to have 37,000 homes when it's fully built out. It's a huge piece of land. It was New Mexico Land Trust land, if I'm not mistaken. It's a huge piece of land. And, the idea is to have it as a live-work community in the sense that you've got businesses there and housing there, so you don't have, what a lot of, communities suffer from is you've got the suburbs where everybody lives and then everybody works and, 30 minutes away. The idea was to have this kind of master planned ideal situation. There is another interchange off I-25 coming.
Right.
I don't know exactly what the timeline is on that, but there is going to be another interchange because that's one of the thing that people kind of push back against right now is that getting in and out on University is a little bit difficult, but you can get in and out on Bobby Foster, and then there's going to be another interchange eventually too.
I think if it's Sam's showing where it's going to be right now.
Yeah, so it's on the map there. Yeah, I mean, that's the master plan that shows where it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So the other thing about Mesa del Sol, it was built around the idea of walkability and connection. So it has rear garage entries, so it's got alleys in all of the homes.
Not all.
Most of the homes.
A lot of them. A lot. The first phase
was all that way.
Was all that way. Over time, that's not quite as much. The reality is people don't like them as much.
It's not normal for our Albuquerque homes.
It's not normal. So there's a mix. And I think that's a great concept, though. But there are homes now where it's more of our traditional front-loading garage.
Yeah.
You get some of both.
I was out there the other day, and I saw two people out in their front porch, and it was refreshing. It was kind of nice, and they had like pots and beautiful flowers around, and it was kind of reminded me of the old times in Minnesota where you didn't see a garage out in front of every house.
Yeah.
So it was sweet, but it was built so that you would have more sense of community and see people in your front yard.
One more thing I just want to bring in on this. If you look at like 20-year forecast, 10-year, 20-year forecast on Albuquerque and where we're going to see the growth in home building, Mesa del Sol is top of the list. That's where the land is. That's where it's available. The utility infrastructure is more there than a lot of other places. So yeah, we're going to continue to see growth in that area
for a long time. Yeah,
Yep.
37,000 acres.
37,000 homes. It's 100,000 acres.
37,000 homes. That's a lot, which means there will be a lot of services. So
Yeah.
there we go. So Tego, I guess it's time to talk about FHFA.
It's time.
It's
All right.
time for the Statomatic.
All right, so I'm going to start. Okay, so let me paint the picture here, Tracy. So FHFA, let me go ahead and pull it up here. FHFA just released their home price index, their HPI. Okay, this FHFA is the entity that oversees Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So they see a huge percentage of all the mortgages that happen in the United States. I would call FHFA the kind of gold standard when it comes to home price indexes. There's a
Okay.
lot of different ones, like we talked about the Zillow Home Price Index,
Right.
or Home Value Index, which is a little bit different, that deals with actual homes sold or not, where FHFA deals with homes that have actually sold and transacted. And what they're trying to come up with is, if you bought a home a year ago and then today you sell that home, the exact same home. So they're trying to compare, if it was the exact same home that sold, how much did that home value change?
Wow.
Versus, like when we look at median price and average price, and those things, drive me crazy because it doesn't tell us how much actual values went up, how
Right.
much appreciation went up. It just tells you how much the median price changed and how much the average price changed, which is a different measurement. Okay. All right, that's enough of the nerdy stuff. No, we're probably not done
We're
with it.
just starting.
We're
I can tell. I know.
I know. Okay, so anyway, so the FHFA just came out, and for the quarter 2, 2025, they've got the Albuquerque metro area at 4.5%. Let's see if I can zoom in on this a little bit so you can see. Oh, look at that. It just zoomed way too much. 4.5% versus nationally 2.9%. So
Wow.
we are trending ahead of the national numbers. If we look at it from a quarter to quarter standpoint, meaning first quarter 25 to first quarter 20, or second quarter 25, we're up 0.9%, basically about 1% per quarter.
Right.
So like if you game that out or add that up, that means 4% for the year. Of course, usually later in the year, we don't see as much appreciation and so on. But nationally, it was flat from quarter 1 to quarter 2. So we're trending ahead of that national. Look at this chart here, Tracy, where we've got the gray line and the blue line. The blue line is Albuquerque, and the gray line is United States. And you can see, starting in 2013, the U.S. home prices actually increased at a faster pace than the Albuquerque market. And what happened was the Albuquerque, or the
Interesting.
national market is starting to flatten out a little bit. And like I said, in this first quarter, the national market has kind of been, the average has kind of been pretty flat. But Albuquerque is continued to increase.
So that means, just to make sure I understand it, that means we didn't jump up as high as other markets.
Correct.
So we don't have like as much of a correction, so to speak.
Yeah, and so let's look at this chart. So this one is, let me zoom back out here. All right, so what we're looking at, again, you got to be online to see this, but I'll explain it. So we're looking at the top 100 markets in the country by size, right? So Albuquerque is the 61st largest metropolitan area in the country.
Okay.
And if you look at all the markets and which ones have increases, which ones have had decreases, you can see on this chart about 25% of those markets have had decreases, about 75% have had increases. Albuquerque falls in at 31st for home price appreciation in the country. Again, 2.9 for the United States, 4.5 for Albuquerque. The top markets for increases, though, Tracy, is look at this list, like Rochester, New York, Hartford, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey metro area.
Very much so.
Lakewood,
far
New
east.
Jersey, Buffalo,
Yeah.
New York, Elgin, Illinois, which is, okay, we've got Midwest in there.
Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago area. Albany, again, more New York, and then Columbia, South Carolina, Newark, New Jersey. So it's really interesting that the places that had the biggest increases in this last year are these East Coast markets, some of the Midwest markets. I know Detroit and like Chicago areas have seen good increases
Yep,
this year too.
they're on the chart. So I'm
Yeah.
looking at our region, right? And I see El Paso is pretty similar to us.
Almost equal. They were at 2.8, we're at 2.9.
Yep, on the chart. Couldn't tell, but it looked about the same. I see Phoenix looks flat. It's right in the middle between blue and red or pink or
Phoenix
whatever
has
that
had
color is.
zero appreciation in the last year, again, based on this
But
data.
not depreciation,
Not depreciation.
which is interesting. You've got Austin, Texas that's gone down. We knew
Yep.
that. Tucson, Arizona more so than Austin, which is surprising.
Yeah, on my chart, I highlighted Tucson and El Paso just because those are the markets that are kind of in our region, similar size to us. Of course, Phoenix is way bigger than us, even though we get compared to Phoenix a lot.
Right.
So,
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
Tucson saw a 3% decline in the last year, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But, the markets like Austin, Tucson, Phoenix, which were the pandemic boom towns,
Right.
kind of, we didn't see that. We were sitting here doing this podcast talking about, well, look at those markets. They are going crazy. And we've seen a lot of increase, but not as much as those other markets.
Right.
And so now we're basically getting the payoff from that, where we're not seeing the correction that some of these other markets are seeing.
Interesting. What else?
Okay, I want to paint a picture, like where are we going to be? So I'm going to bring in another chart. Looks very similar to the one we were just looking at, but it's different. It's the same but different.
Yes, I see that.
But it's still the
1
top
year.
100 markets. But what this is the forecast. So now we're looking a year out from now. Now this is based on Zillow. Zillow looks at things a little bit differently, but they've got a lot of data. And what they're saying is Albuquerque will see a 2% increase in home values in the next year. That puts Albuquerque in the top 10 of all 100 markets in the country. And so, again, they project Albuquerque to do fairly well.
That's great.
Yeah, so that's that. Now let's talk about, let me see, which one do I want to talk about? So let's talk about, we got to look at all these things when we're trying to figure out, okay, what are home prices going to do in the future? Because one of the big indicator of price declines is distressed homeowners. Distressed in the sense that they can't make their mortgage payment, they're behind on their mortgage payment, they're going into foreclosure. I've got two charts here. I posted, this is actually a blog on our website from a few weeks ago. And so what I've got up here is national mortgage performance. And what it's looking at is delinquency rate. And what delinquency rate is, anybody that has a mortgage that's 30 days or more behind. And what we're seeing is right now nationally, it's about 3.3% versus a normal pattern would be closer to 4% of people with mortgages are delinquent. Well, right now it's only 3%. If we dig in even deeper and we look at how does New Mexico compare to the rest of the country, in New Mexico right now, 2.9%, so about 3% of people with mortgages, that's a key thing, right? You know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Yeah. So about 3% are behind on their mortgage, okay? It's very low.
Remind me of the number of homes that are projected to actually have a mortgage in our market.
It's somewhere around 60%
Would have
a mortgage.
Have a mortgage. So 40% have no mortgage. So of the 60%, almost 3% might be
Correct.
a little
Correct.
bit in the delinquency of 30, 60, or 90 days past due.
Yeah, it's important to understand we're not talking all homes because 40% of the homes in New Mexico are free and clear, more or less. It's somewhere in that range. The other thing is that the number of foreclosure filings is only 0.5% of all the mortgages out there. So again, very, very low.
1 in 200 of the 60%.
Right.
Yeah.
So the takeaway is homeowners aren't in distress like we saw back in the day. I mean, if we go back to that other chart and you look at this from 2007, 2008, where the number of people delinquent, it just went through the roof, right? We're nowhere near that. Nothing like that at all. All right, one more thing. Okay, a couple more things I want to bring in here. Let's talk about inventory. Number of homes on the market. We're looking at a chart from 2006 all the way to today, monthly, the number of homes on the market. Right now in Albuquerque, we have about 30% more than we did a year ago. So if you're online, you can see, we're somewhere just over 2,000 based on this measure, which is 30% more than last year. However, if we go back to kind of, let's say, a normal year, like 2019, we still have 10% less. We're one of the few markets in the country that still has lower inventory than the 2019 numbers. Markets like Texas, Phoenix, when I say Texas, I'm thinking like, Dallas, Houston, the big markets, Austin. They have more homes than they did in 2019. We're still one of the markets that doesn't. We're still below that level. So it's not like we have this glut of supply.
Right.
The good news is for buyers, there's more supply than a year ago, than 2 years ago, than 3 years ago, than 4 years ago. So there are more options. However, if we look at the average days on market, Average days on market. So the other thing we look at is like days on market, right? We want to understand like how long is it taking to sell homes. And Tracy, you know this more from like a feet on the street kind of sense is good homes in good areas. I'd say good areas, that's not a right way to put it. Homes that are in great condition, that are priced to the market, that have desirable features or in desirable locations, they're still selling fast.
Right. Yep.
Right? So it's not like there's no buyers out there. It's that it has a lot to do with product, and the buyers don't have quite the urgency that we've seen, obviously, in the last 4 years. But 33 days on market on average in July is pretty normal. In fact, if we look at this chart here, you go back to the years 2012, 2013, 2014, 15. I mean, average days on market was, 50, 60 days, and we're at 33 days. So that's not an indicator of stress in the market either.
Right.
And then affordability, we know, is a challenge for a lot of people. And there's people maybe on the sidelines thinking, I'm just waiting for the housing market to crash so that I can afford to buy a home.
I hope they're not. I would think maybe they're hoping prices come down some, but not crash.
Well,
but
yeah, if we get to a situation, there's a much larger problem going on in the world if we do see any substantial price reduction. But what people really should be thinking about is what's the mortgage interest rate?
Right.
Because it has so much more impact on their monthly payment versus the actual price.
Right. So when you look at this beautiful chart, if you're online, take a look. And if you're not, it's worth getting online to look at monthly payment impact of rate versus price drop. So Tego, you put this together on a $350,000 loan based on a 30-year schedule, and it shows what the monthly payment might be by a price drop versus a rate drop.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So if you say a $350,000 loan at a 7% mortgage, that's about $2,300 a month. Okay.
Right.
If you get a 6% mortgage, that's only about $2,100 a month.
Right.
So it's a pretty substantial decrease.
But it would take a full 10% decrease in the price of the home to get to that same level.
Correct.
Right.
If the interest rate was still at 7%.
Oh.
So the point is, we're not going to see a 10% decrease in home prices.
Based on all the data you just provided.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, could we see mortgage rates floating down to 6%?
Possibly. So, which brings me to new construction, where a lot of people are buying down the rates to get people into homes to get them to these monthly payments. Plus, we have regular sellers who are offering some concessions now to maybe go towards a buyer having a better interest rate. So there's a lot of things that we can do to help people now.
Yeah, and so I wrote a whole blog on this, just breaking down all this data and looking at it. I'll put it in the show notes where I go through. It's like, okay, if we just look at one thing, one metric, which happens all the time, we decide how things are. Well, there's so many more things to consider when we're talking about where home prices are going. And speaking of which, I got one more thing I want to talk about.
Okay, go ahead.
So this segment's going to be called How to Tell the Truth and Lie at the Same Time in a Housing Market Headline.
Oh.
I've noticed, and I know you've noticed, is that housing market headlines seem to get a lot of attention. And so these news entities will put out headlines that are, let's say, doom about the housing market, because I guess they get clicks.
Right.
So I want to show you a headline I saw, Tracy. Oop, that's not it. Hold on, where is it? Here it is. So this headline was, Goldman, as in Goldman Sachs, adjustable rate mortgages climb to 41% of the total held by U.S. banks, surpassing the global financial crisis. So if you were just a casual observer and you saw that headline, what would you think?
Oh my gosh, something's wrong. Oh my gosh, look at that.
There's a bunch of adjustable rate mortgages. And people that have kind of paid attention know that the adjustable rate mortgages back during the GFC, Great Financial Crisis, had a lot to do with it because there was a lot of them out there.
Where people had to refinance and
Yeah.
couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the reason I bring this up is because the headline is actually true, but there's a nuance to it that you have to click into the story and pay a subscription to actually get that detail. I already knew what the answer was,
Of course you did.
but the key is it says adjustable rate mortgages climbed to 41% of total held by U.S. banks. How many mortgages do U.S. banks hold, Tracy?
I don't think they hold them, do they?
They don't.
No.
They sell them to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac or
Right.
Ginnie Mae, right? They don't hold residential mortgages. What they do hold are commercial mortgages. They hold commercial mortgages, which actually normally do have some sort of adjustment built into them,
Right.
right? So that's the
So
key
there's
here. So they told the truth.
It's like two truths and a lie,
It's
except
two
it's
truth-
one truth and a lie.
Well, they're both truth, but they're not giving total context. So
Right.
when you first look at it, you think, oh, adjustable rate mortgages, they're out of control. Oh no, here we go again. No, and again, this when it says 41% surpassing global financial crisis record, it was 39% back then. So yes, they are higher, but again, these are more commercial mortgages, a very small portion of all mortgage debt that's out there.
Okay. Well,
So,
thank you
anyway.
for that. As always,
There's my myth buster. No, that's not the right word. Debunk of the week. How about that?
that's your headline bust of the week.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do have new houses, newly listed properties on the market. We do have open houses this weekend. Easiest, just get on our website because you have a great tab of new on the market and you've got an open house tab there. So we'd be happy to have you get there and give us a call, and we'd be honored to give you a tour and show you some homes.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning in. If you got any questions about real estate in Albuquerque, we're the Venturi Group at 505-448-8888. We're with the Real Broker here in New Mexico. Take care.